All right, so you've decided to read the Bible, you open up the New Testament, and boom, you hit a wall. A long, long list of names. It's the part everybody wants to skip, right? But what if I told you that seemingly boring list is actually a legal document, a mind-blowing mathematical puzzle, and a story packed with scandal and grace? Yeah, this is so much more than a family tree. Let's get into it.
It's a totally fair question. Why would Matthew, who's about to tell one of the most important stories ever, start with something that looks like an ancient phone book? Well, here's the secret. He wasn't trying to put his readers to sleep. He was making a powerful, deliberate, and, for his original audience, an absolutely explosive claim from the very first sentence.
You know, to really get this list, we've got to put ourselves in their shoes. Matthew was writing to his fellow Jews, and in their world, your lineage was everything. It was your resume, your legal standing, your entire identity. So this list wasn't just a casual, hello. No, this was a royal summons. It was Matthew walking into a courtroom, slapping a document on the table, and presenting the evidence for a king.
And here it is, the core of his entire case, laid out in verse 1. Matthew is laser-focused on proving two massive things: that Jesus is the son of David, the rightful heir to the throne, and the son of Abraham, the descendant who is promised to bring a blessing to the whole world. For any Jewish person reading this, these weren't just nice titles. They were the absolute non-negotiable requirements for the Messiah.
So Matthew is basically grabbing his readers by the shoulders and saying, hey, remember those huge foundational promises God made centuries ago? The ones our entire nation is built on? Well, he's about to connect all the dots, starting with the two most important promises in their entire history.
Everything, and I mean everything, hangs on these two guys. On one side, you've got Abraham, the father of the whole nation. On the other, you have David, the greatest king they ever had. For Jesus to be the true Messiah, he had to be the fulfillment of the specific promises made to both of them. So let's take a quick look at what those promises actually were.
Okay, first, the promise to Abraham. This one was huge, way bigger than just one nation. God told him that through one of his descendants, a blessing would go out to all families on earth. It was a promise for everybody. So what Matthew is claiming right from the get-go is that this long-awaited worldwide blessing, it starts right here with Jesus.
And then you've got the promise to David. This one is all about kingship, about the crown. God promised David that someone from his direct family line would sit on his throne forever. So the Messiah couldn't just be some wise teacher or a prophet. No way. He had to be royalty, with a legitimate, verifiable, blood-right claim to the throne of David.
So Matthew has made his legal case. He's established the two big claims. But he doesn't stop there. This is where it gets really cool. He embeds a kind of secret code, a hidden numerical pattern, right into the list of names. It's a piece of mathematical genius that would have practically shouted its meaning to his original audience.
The key to this entire secret code is one number, 14. Now, this isn't random. Matthew chose this number with incredible purpose because it's a giant flashing arrow pointing directly back to one specific person.
Okay, so in ancient Hebrew, every letter also had a number value. It's a system called gematria. And if you take the Hebrew letters for the name David, that's Dalet, Vav, Dalet. Their values are 4, 6, and 4. And what happens when you add those up? You get 14. See? This is no coincidence. This is 100% intentional.
And just look at what he does with this. It's brilliant. He carefully structures the entire history of Israel into 3 sets of 14 generations, from Abraham all the way up to King David. 14 generations. From David's golden age down to the lowest point in their history, the exile to Babylon. 14 generations. And from the exile to the arrival of Jesus, you guessed it, 14. He is literally stamping David, David, David all over the timeline, making it impossible to miss the point. Jesus is the ultimate son of David. But right when we're sitting here amazed by this perfect coded structure, Matthew throws a massive curveball. He starts including people in this list that any normal person writing a royal history would have tried to hide. This isn't some cleaned-up, sanitized story of perfect saints. Oh no, this is a story about messy, complicated, deeply flawed people, starting with a woman named Tamar.
Now, to understand her story, you have to know about this ancient law called levirate marriage. It was a really important social safety net. If a man died without any children, his brother had a duty to marry the widow. This wasn't about romance. It was a sacred obligation to protect the woman and make sure the family name and inheritance didn't die out.
So here's Tamar's situation.
Her husband dies, his brother marries her, and then he dies. Her father-in-law Judah is supposed to give her his third son, but he gets scared and backs out of the deal. He just leaves her in limbo, a childless widow with no rights and no future. She was denied justice. So, she takes matters into her own hands in a very, very dramatic way.
So Tamar carries out this shocking plan, disguises herself, and ends up pregnant by Judah himself. When he finds out, he's ready to condemn her. But when she reveals the truth of what happened, the story takes an incredible turn. Judah, the great patriarch, publicly declares, "She has been more righteous than I." He admits in front of everyone that it was his failure that forced her to do what she did.
So why would Matthew put this bombshell of a story right in the Messiah's family tree? To make a point that's almost too good to be true, that God's perfect plan is not derailed by imperfect people. In fact, it seems he often does his best work right in the middle of our failures, our deceptions, and our most complicated messes. God's grace isn't afraid of the mess.
So let's jump to the end of the line. After tracing this long, messy, imperfect, but divinely guided family tree, through kings and farmers, heroes and scoundrels, Matthew finally brings us to the person that this whole story, this whole history, has been pointing to.
And I want you to notice the incredibly careful wording here. The genealogy traces the line all the way to Joseph, the husband of Mary. That's the link. That gives Jesus the legal, official claim to the throne of David. But then Matthew shifts gears. He says Jesus was born of whom, meaning of Mary. The royal right comes through Joseph's line, but the birth itself is something totally new and different.
And then Matthew does his signature move. He connects it all back to a prophecy from the Old Testament. He says all of this happened in this specific way to fulfill what the prophet Isaiah said centuries before, that a virgin would have a son and he would be called by a very special, very symbolic name.
And that name is Emmanuel, which, as Matthew helpfully translates for us, means God with us. I mean, this is the mic drop. This is the ultimate fulfillment of everything. The promise to Abraham for a blessing for all nations. The promise to David for an eternal king. It all leads to this. God himself literally here with us.
So that boring list of names? It's a legal masterpiece, a mathematical code, and a story that proves God's grace works right in the middle of scandalous situations. It's a declaration that God's plan for all of history is perfect, even when the people in it are, well, not. And that really leaves us with a final thought, doesn't it? If that's how God worked back then, through all of their messes and complications, what does that mean for our own messy, complicated, and imperfect lives today?